Hello, this is Michael Paul with the New Orleans Scottish Rite College. I'd like to do a video today on one of the most common emails that I receive. In fact, with the recent Scottish Rite Research Society's release of Albert Pike's The Porch and Middle Chamber, the emails have increased. The question is, how do I charter a Scottish Rite Craft Lodge? Okay, let's look at this question step by step and with pros and cons. At the beginning, I believe it's important to touch on a bit of the overall problem of the scarcity of this type of lodge. So, without getting into a long, drawn out history, much of which I've covered in papers and videos, let me give you a thumbnail account. Beginning around the general time of the 1960s or 70s, Freemasonry began a downward turn in membership. So much of what we were able to do at one time began falling by the wayside. Masonic education fell away quickly. Lodges began having more and more trouble filling chairs and paying bills. Where once lodges filled their seats to capacity, some lodges began considering themselves lucky to have one or two members over the required minimum to open a lodge. Many lodges failed and ceased to exist. Many more lodges were able to exist only because of several lodges in their area merging. The lodge experience was reduced to showing up at lodge, eating with friends, opening the lodge, reading the minutes, paying bills, closing the lodge, and then going home. That was it. Around the 1980s, and while lodges were still having trouble staying alive, a new development began outside of Freemasonry. The general public became fascinated with a series of popular books and movies telling accounts of Freemasonry, the Knights Templar, the Roman Catholic Church, and a fantasy tale of action, mystery, and romance. All of a sudden, Freemasonry became popular. Freemasons were being seen by many of the general public as mystic monks who held deep secrets, possessed hidden powers, and who, by means of magical ceremonies, control the world and its wealth. Well, young men with stars in their eyes began knocking on our doors. They wanted what we had, at least. They wanted what they thought we had. They came in droves and entered the lodge expecting to find enlightened sages and the secret answers to the mysteries of the world. And what did they find? They found a bunch of old timers arguing over bills and if the next meeting's menu would be string beans and ham or spaghetti. They found nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, of what they expected to find in a Masonic lodge. And it was not just that the lodge was absent of all that was suggested in the fantasy novels of Dan Brown or other popular authors. It was that they found nothing at all. Even the classic Masonic books written by respected Masons of the past were unknown in the lodges. So many Masonic lodges had become empty shells. The lodge experience was that of a low-quality social club. For many, it was a revolving door. They joined, saw what they expected was nowhere to be found, and walked. That was it. Grand Lodges truly had no idea what was happening or why it was happening. They had been giving their full attention to their draining bank accounts. They were caught wholly by surprise. All of a sudden, they saw many new members coming in, but then leaving almost as quickly as they arrived. They didn't understand why they were coming in so quickly and why they walked out almost as fast as they walked in. We must understand that each Grand Lodge is made up of the members of the lodges that had been experiencing trouble for many years. The Masonic experience of more than a few Grand Masters was opening the lodge, reading the minutes, paying the bills, close the lodge, and go home. That's it. Over the last dozen or so years, we've had a dozen or so Grand Masters in all our jurisdictions. What was their Masonic experience since joining Freemasonry? The collection of past Grand Masters in each jurisdiction advised the current Grand Masters. What was their Masonic experience since joining Freemasonry? We need to understand that these jurisdictions have been in trouble, sometimes serious trouble, for 40 or more years. Yes, some Grand Masters were shining lights and knew Freemasonry inside and out, but there were also those who were simply filling a slot with very little understanding of Freemasonry itself. And another group were the ones who had allowed ego and hunger for power to guide them. Grand Lodge leadership was indeed a mixed bag. But if there was one thing that most all of the Grand Masters and past Grand Masters did know, all were taught, it was how to keep a troubled jurisdiction from completely falling apart. I don't mean how to grow a jurisdiction or turn it around. I mean how to keep them from dying. The recipe was simple. Keep your head down, don't make waves, raise money however you can, and don't take unnecessary chances. In too many cases, success was defined only by not falling apart. In the same last dozen or so years, there has also been a change in many of the new Masons. Yes, they are just as disappointed and dissatisfied as so many of the new Masons from the past, but not all of them are so quick to walk away. So, is that a good thing for the Grand Lodges? Well, that depends on how you define good. The new Masons clearly see the problems, and while they may not be walking away, they are demanding change. They are making waves and rocking the boat. They are not at all satisfied with the policy of just treading water and existing in a Masonic half-life. They see the Grand Lodge, or the Emperor, with no clothes. These young Masons have read and learned the teachings of Freemasonry. Many have spent years studying the Masonic philosophy before they joined. They may not know all the workings of the organization, but they know the teachings of Freemasonry. They know what Masonry is and what its philosophy can do. They know that these teachings are not being taught in so many of our lodges. They know that too many of our Grand Lodge leaders have little to no knowledge of these teachings. They are tired of just existing. They are tired of having roadblocks put up by leaders who they know are unable to fix the problem, or maybe even see the problem. They want change, and they will accept nothing else. It may have been the internet, a book, or a Masonic friend who talked about those Scottish Rite Craft Lodges that have worked in Louisiana, but many now have heard of them, and it has interested a good number of the young guys to no end. Yes, the Scottish Rite philosophy is of true value, but all that you can experience in the valley begins with the fourth degree. The idea that there is an actual ritual for the first 3 degrees of the Scottish Rite, and that it is being worked by some lodges in the United States, as well as widely around the world, interests them greatly. So why are there so few of these lodges allowed in the U.S.? How do we get these lodges in our jurisdictions? How do we get hold of that ritual? Okay, let's look at all of this. There is just no way that I can remember how many times I have been asked in emails or in person if I could give someone a Scottish Rite Craft Ritual. It's nearly always someone who I have never had any contact with before, and most of the requests seem to be made with a sense of entitlement. It's like they are entitled to request, and I must comply with giving them an actual lodge ritual. For a long time, I believed it was simply new Masons who didn't stop to think about what they were asking me. I thought it was only a serious lack of Masonic education. In many cases, this may be true, but there was another factor that I didn't think about. A few months ago, I did a Zoom lecture for one of the Scottish Rite Lodges in Louisiana, and they did some promotion on it. And not surprisingly, I received an email from someone asking for a ritual. As usual, I told them that I can't send out Masonic rituals for reasons that should be obvious. He wrote me back saying that he didn't understand. He said that he was asking about a Scottish Rite Craft Ritual, and since that was not a real Masonic ritual, he didn't understand the problem. Well, I think I now understand the problem. Regardless of what anyone thinks or believes, the Scottish Rite Craft Ritual is one of the most popular craft rituals around the world, and I mean with very well recognized and regular jurisdictions. Whether or not it's used in your jurisdiction doesn't change that fact. The most boisterous and authoritative sounding past Grand Master does not change that fact. The Scottish Rite Craft Ritual is a very real and actual Masonic ritual. That being said, there are Masonic rules and laws concerning the proper handling of Masonic rituals. Sending them out to anyone who asks on the internet is not how Masons share rituals. So, for new Masons and Masons who may have never been instructed, let's look at how to properly obtain Masonic rituals. The first thing that you should remember is that you must follow the rules and laws of your jurisdiction. The second thing is to remember that your jurisdiction may not have the same rules and laws as other jurisdictions. One of the most unfortunate things that I see online is when a Mason asks, "How do you do this?" Then a Mason from another jurisdiction says, "Well, you do it by doing this, this, and this." The Mason giving the advice may be 100% correct for his jurisdiction, but 100% wrong for the jurisdiction of the Mason asking the question. When asking how you should do something, ask your worshipful master, district deputy grand master, or your Grand Lodge office. Don't take the chance of receiving well-meaning, incorrect information that could get you in trouble. Masonic rituals are a rather clear-cut matter. Most jurisdictions of which I am aware view them as private information that you are not to share with others who you have not sat in lodge with. Even then, restrictions may apply. Now, some jurisdictions allow printed rituals and some don't. But even in the jurisdictions that allow printed rituals, I know of none who will allow their members to just send out their rituals to anyone on the internet who asks for a copy. I know that is certainly not allowed by the Grand Lodge of Louisiana, of which I am a member. In order to receive a copy of the Scottish Rite Craft Rituals, as used by lodges chartered by the Grand Lodge of Louisiana, certain steps need to be taken. First, you need to speak to your Grand Secretary, not anyone online. If he believes that you have a valid need for such a ritual, then he will write to the Grand Secretary of the Grand Lodge of Louisiana. If the Grand Secretary of the Grand Lodge of Louisiana feels that the request is a valid one, he will consult with whoever he feels is appropriate, and then, and only then, will he send a copy of the ritual to the requesting Grand Secretary. Is it likely that the Grand Lodge of Louisiana will send its ritual to another Grand Lodge? Maybe. I can't answer that question with any certainty. It is possible, but it's pretty certain that if an individual Mason contacts them, or if the reason given is not a good one, it's likely that the answer will be no. He may not even answer individual Masons, as it would be inappropriate for an individual Mason to even ask. If the Grand Lodge of Louisiana feels that another Grand Lodge wishes to charter lodges working in a Scottish Rite Craft Ritual, then it is possible, but the Grand Lodge would be the only one to answer that question with any certainty, and I would assume that it would be on a case-by-case basis. One thing that I should mention that can turn into a nasty situation is involving your SGIG. I've had more than one Mason tell me in emails that it's okay for me to send him a Scottish Rite Craft Ritual as his SGIG said it was okay. Well, no, and that's a major problem. Neither your SGIG, my SGIG, or anyone's SGIG has any authority to involve himself as an SGIG in any Grand Lodge question. That's a very quick way for an SGIG to find himself in a world of trouble. An SGIG is a voting, active member of a Supreme Council. It is extraordinarily inappropriate for any SGIG to insert himself in anything that should be a Grand Lodge decision. If the matter was pushed, he might find himself in serious trouble with his Grand Lodge, the Grand Lodge in question, and his Supreme Council. Keep your SGIG out of the matter of Scottish Rite Craft Lodges. The only way that he should be involved is as an interested Master Mason. Okay, let's now say that you have followed all the proper channels and you have in your hands a Scottish Rite Craft Ritual. Now what do you do? Well, in most cases, if you are at this point and have done nothing else, then you have a beautiful ritual that you can't put to actual work in a lodge. You see, each and every Grand Lodge has clear instructions on how to create a lodge and the ritual that can be used in their lodges. You need to get hold of your Grand Lodge's law book and learn it well. You need to follow every step outlined to properly create a lodge. Once you're ready to contact your Grand Lodge about a dispensation, and before you request a dispensation, you need to officially ask if you can use the Scottish Rite Craft Ritual for the lodge. Chances are your Grand Lodge will tell you, no, you can't use that ritual. And just like that, it will be over. At least, maybe for a while. If you ask why, you will likely be told because it's not allowed in your jurisdiction. Period. So what next? You are now at a point where, one, everything ends. Two, you get into trouble because you said or did things inappropriate. Or three, things start to go in a positive direction. Everything that happens next or doesn't happen will depend on what you do or don't do and your attitude. It's all a matter of cause and effect. Even if you have the ritual and you have the required number to create a lodge, and you probably, will still be told no and that the Scottish Rite Craft Ritual is not allowed. Asking why it's not allowed is not going to satisfy you. This is especially true if you have studied Masonic philosophy but are not completely clear on the history of Masonry in the United States. As I have mentioned in a number of papers and videos, in the very early days of Masonry in the United States, a decision was made to have one Grand Lodge per state and one ritual per Grand Lodge. Why? Because that's what they wanted. That ritual evolved into the Preston Webb or York Rite ritual, hammered out about 1816. This was the ritual for all U.S. Grand Lodges, except Louisiana, and maybe a couple of other places without much fuss. But it was Louisiana who in the early 1830s officially recognized and allowed 3 different craft lodge rituals to be worked by their lodges. This action caused a great shock for Masons outside of Louisiana coming to visit or live in the state. Now, a major battle took place in the mid-1800s, and I'm not going to get into that now, but the end result is pretty much the same as it was before this Masonic battle. Lodges under the Grand Lodge of Louisiana work in more than one ritual, and the rest of the U.S. does not, in most cases. But as a result of that war, a good number of U.S. Grand Lodges now have it written into their rules and regulations that only one approved ritual is allowed in their jurisdiction. And some even spell out that the Scottish Rite Craft Ritual is specifically not allowed. Now, if you push for why this ritual is not allowed, you will likely get because it's not allowed, or because it's not in our regulations, or maybe even because it's not a regular ritual. All of the answers mean that they really don't know why it's not allowed, but the last answer is extraordinarily problematic. I believe that one of the most dangerous things in Masonry is for one to have a high level of ego with authority and while believing something that is completely wrong. In such cases, it is sometimes impossible for such an individual to admit or even many times to believe that they could be in error. You have to walk carefully if you want to successfully navigate such a situation. It doesn't help the situation to point out that such an individual should not hold the office or position that they hold. They are there, and that is the situation. It most certainly does not help to argue. If there is anything from this video that you should remember, it is that you should never allow an uninformed, ill-tempered, and egotistical leader to cause you to violate your obligations. You must control you and keep your emotions in check. Grand Lodges operate by the vote. Every year, resolutions are presented to the Grand Lodge for voting. Learn how things are done in your Grand Lodge and follow the rules. If you want to create a lodge working in the Scottish Rite Craft Ritual, then write such a resolution. If a law exists prohibiting the Scottish Rite Craft Ritual, Then write a resolution explaining why this law does not best serve the Grand Lodge and remove it. Above all, recognize that by doing these things, it still may not result in a successful vote or even guarantee that your resolutions will be presented for a vote. Don't expect quick results, but be persistent. Don't give up. Make sure that your resolution is well written, insults no one, explains why the resolution is beneficial for everyone, and be flexible. If certain words or phrases are mentioned as being a problem, change or remove them when you present the resolution again the following year. Again, don't give up. But let's now look at this whole situation from a different perspective. Let's say that you have done everything properly and you won. Let's say that your Grand Lodge gives you permission to create a lodge and that it can work in the Scottish Rite Craft Ritual. Now what? Listen carefully. If you believe that creating a lodge working in the Scottish Rite Craft Ritual will solve all of the problems in your jurisdiction, then you don't understand the real problems any more than those who objected to this ritual. In my many years of seeing Scottish Rite Craft rituals, I've seen beautifully done degrees, horrible degrees, and work done so unmasonically using the Scottish Rite ritual that it resulted in the lodge's charter being suspended. The rituals are not the key. It is the members who determine the success or failure of a lodge, regardless of the ritual. It's how much Masonic education is given to the members, how they act, and what they do. The Harmic legend is taught in both the Scottish Rite and York Rite Craft rituals, as well as other rituals. The success of any lodge is shown by putting the lessons presented in the ritual to work. Yes, the Scottish Rite ritual is just as valid as the York Rite ritual. No, there is no valid reason for denying the beautiful and symbolically rich Scottish Rite ritual from being worked in any jurisdiction. Such a ritual adds, not detracts, from any jurisdiction. But it is a very serious error to believe that any Masonic ritual is itself the savior of Masonry. The Masonic ritual, any Masonic ritual, is only the vehicle used to deliver the Masonic philosophy, the teachings, to its students. It is the philosophy that is most important, not the ritual. If your lodge or jurisdiction can't survive without the Scottish Rite Craft Ritual, then I don't believe for a moment that it will survive even with this ritual. Don't pin success or failure on any one ritual. Pin the success of Freemasonry on the moral philosophy that it teaches and makes available in all of its rituals. On the other hand, we can liken Masonic rituals to flavors of ice cream. We might have our favorites, but it serves no one to demand that our favorite should be the only flavor served. We must be better and smarter than that. Thank you for watching. If you like the videos, please hit the like button and subscribe to us. See you next time.